Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's good to have you here and the humor we had to just before. Hey, well, we're in Genesis. We're still in Genesis, and we're up to verse 10 in chapter 24. We've been, especially over the last several chapters, we've been looking at God selecting Abraham as an important figure in carrying out God's plan. And so we've seen a whole bunch of different things in the way that God has worked through Abraham. Now, just remember, in Abraham's time, there was no scripture, there was no law, there wasn't anything that you could use to say, okay, let's go back and take a look at God's way of doing things or God's rules and stipulations. Instead, what they had back then was called oral tradition. Oral tradition was what was passed down through the family lines about what God had done or was doing. Some believe that Job's story was an oral tradition that was passed down, and it was possible that even Moses had written about Job, that it might have been Moses who wrote Job. I don't know. I'm just saying. So it's possible because Job would have been before Abraham's time, like I said a couple lessons ago, maybe a couple generations before him, or maybe even the generation before him. But it looked like Job was somebody that lived somewhere in the 200-year time frame, based on everything that happened and the having children and then losing all his children and then once again getting children and looking at the ages that they have in the genealogical records in Genesis, it makes sense that he would fit around the 200 to 250-year lifespan. And whereas we see Abraham lives, what, about 180. So we know that the ages were diminishing each generation. As you go through it, you see that, because Noah was in his 900s when he died, and we see his sons lived 800 and 700 years, and it was diminishing as it went down. So we see that things had changed on the earth, and that the earth was no longer conducive to the longer time spans like it was before the flood. So Abraham, God selects Abraham. He, in turn, as we've gotten now to this point, is passing on the blessing and God's covenant to his child of promise. And we talked quite a bit about how there were a lot of similarities when God had tested Abraham to go and sacrifice Isaac. And then what we see is that now Abraham's of age. I mean, he's getting ready to go. Okay. He's not gonna die just yet because he has to get married again. Yeah, exactly. So remember, Sarah's gonna already have passed away, but Abraham's gonna get remarried. I mean, even in his old age, apparently, when God made him strong, he made him strong. Okay. And so he ends up having 6 sons from this other wife, but we'll get to that. But his concern, though, is for Isaac, that Isaac will be able to have, to be functional within the covenant. Because, I mean, God had already promised Abraham that he is going to have descendants like the sand of the seashore and the stars of the sky, if you could number them. And so, obviously, Abraham realizes, well, Isaac's got to be able to have children. So he wants to get a wife for his son, but clearly he understands that through the covenant, he doesn't want to get a wife from the people of the land that God is going to give to them, to him and his descendants. So he doesn't want them because he knows that basically in time, God's going to push these people out to bring his people in, because God's already promised him that everything he saw and every place his foot would tread, that land would be theirs. So he doesn't want to use a wife from those people, from the Canaanites or any of those people, because they just didn't fit within the covenant plan. So we saw last week that Abraham takes his favored servant, and like Milton brought up, it's possible that that might have been the servant that would have been the heir that Abraham thought was going to take over for him, because he just wasn't so sure that he was going to be able to have a child with Sarah, or Sarai at the time. But God said he was going to do it. Well, anyway, this trusted servant, after he gets all the instructions about where he's to go, he was to go back to Haran, which was where Abraham had come from, where his family had stayed after they left Ur the Chaldees and went up north into Haran, which is about central, southeastern kind of Turkey, if you will, or maybe just northern Syria and today's way of looking, central Syria, northern central Syria. So that's where Haran was. And so he said, go back there to my family and get him a wife from my family. And apparently that was normal to intermarry in family. And at the time, think about it. We're talking thousands of years. We're talking about 2,000 years, 3,000 years before Jesus. Okay, that this is happening. And apparently the genealogical pull was very strong then. And God had made it in such a way to where even if you married in family, you didn't have a problem with, having problematic offspring. So back then they could do that. Today, you don't want to marry within family because you could run the risk of having problematic offspring. And plus, well, God said you're not supposed to do it. After the law came out, he said, don't do it anymore. But so when you're looking at that and you realize Abraham wants to make sure Isaac gets a spouse, a woman that is from their family, their clan, so to speak, he tells his servant that he needs him to go and do that, and explains to him what needs to happen. Remember, his servant asked him, well, what if the woman doesn't want to come? He said, well, and at that point, then just come back, but do not take Isaac, my son, with you up there. In other words, this is where God has sent us. This is the land. He needs to stay here, and he needs to do what needs to be done here in the land that God is giving us. So that's where we left off. The servant understands, but notice also, what did God say? What did Abraham say God had told him about him going up there? Was he technically going alone? Remember, it said that
he would be with him.
The angel of the Lord would be with him. Remember, the Lord would provide an angel to go with him. So, and I thought that was awesome of the Lord, right? In other words, that was obviously part of God's plan if he was going with this servant. And it reminded me of Hagar, right? When Hagar got kicked out, God showed mercy and compassion and took care of Hagar out in the wilderness, remember? And Hagar was Egyptian, so it made sense that once the angel of the Lord talked to her, that she would go to Egypt, because that's what she understood, and that was where she was from. So that's why she and Ishmael went down to Egypt. But so we know that the angel of the Lord is with this servant. And this servant clearly has learned about the Lord from Abraham. And we'll see that in tonight's lesson. Now, this chapter is long, okay? It's like 60 some odd verses or something. And we're at verse 10. So we'll go ahead and get into it.
Another month.
Oh, no. We'll be done with this one tonight, okay?
Okay.
What about 2 a.m.? Is that okay? No, just kidding. Just kidding, before you start hanging up. But anyway, so we'll see how God works this out. Or will he? Or will the servant be left hanging? Or will the Canaanites attack him? Because, hey, he's got like 10 camels full of goods, right? It's like, man, what a target, by these Canaanites to, get all these riches. Because that's what he was carrying, a bunch of riches on 10 camels. So, I mean, what a target. So we'll see what happens in the process. Any questions on the introduction? Okay, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for an opportunity to come together and study your word. I pray that you give us insight and understanding to the way you work and also to how wonderful you are to your children and how you protect and provide in every way. We ask that you keep our hearts and minds open and that we would see the wonder in your word as we study it to bring you honor and glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
Mhm.
Okay, let me share it out and see what we've got going here. Okay, so I'm picking up where I left off in my introduction, and so we'll continue to go from there. And we're in verse 10. So we've gotten to the point where the master or the servant's taking, okay, going ahead and carrying out Abraham's plan. And he says, then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all sorts of choice gifts from his master. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. Now, in that time, Mesopotamia went all the way up to Asia Minor. Okay, so that was all the Mesopotamian Valley going up there. Today, it's not that way, but in that time, that was all of that area. All of what we would consider Syria was all part of Mesopotamia, but it's at the northern end where he's going to this city of Nahor, which was, wasn't that his brother's name?
Yes.
Yeah, it was his brother. Obviously, they named it after his brother. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at the time of evening, the time when the women went out to draw water. Hey, there seems to be something that is similar in what's going on. How did Moses end up finding Zipporah, his wife? Pretty much
Well,
same way, right?
yeah.
At a well, and helping them draw water. But anyway, the women went out to draw water. So, and that was typical in those days that women would do some of that work. It didn't always have to be the guys, but there were women that did it too. So it was an equal opportunity job, being a shepherdess or a shepherd, apparently. And in that day, that's how you made sure everything stayed equal. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out. But he goes there, and usually in the evening, after the animals have already fed, that's when they go to draw the water before they take them back and put them in the pens. And so he goes there, and he just waits there. Apparently, the angel of the Lord just gave him a piece about stopping there. Instead of going into the town, he stops there. This is usually outside of the town, and the people from the town would come and get their water there. And he said, this is verse 12. Now look what he does. I mean, this is something that tells me that he was a follower of God, and apparently Abraham had made that impression on him, because look what he does. He says, "O Lord, God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham." Now, wasn't that something we've been studying the last couple weeks in our Sunday school, and also we heard in the sermons, well, last few weeks actually, about prayer, how important prayer is, and we saw it with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We saw it with Daniel. We're seeing it here with this servant. I mean, we see that prayer is central to interacting with God, to achieving his purpose. Yeah, go ahead, Milton.
Yeah. Interesting thing is when Abraham told him the angel of the Lord would go with him, he believed him
Amen.
because he's speaking to him right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that was a pretty impressive thing that, I mean, he was willing to listen and do.
Yeah. We don't hear about it in the Bible, but this servant was right there. He may have seen Abraham talking to God and witnessed it. We don't know.
It wouldn't surprise me a bit, but clearly this servant has seen how God was doing great things through Abraham.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he's saying, because look what he does. He says, of my master Abraham, and the way you show steadfast love to my master Abraham. In other words, would you do it to me too, please? Hey, I'm doing Abraham's business. Would you please, help me with this thing? So I think that's awesome, So in verse 13, he says, behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming to draw water. Now, notice what he does. Remember how Abraham wanted to negotiate with God about Sodom and Gomorrah? Well, Sodom in this case, remember that?
Yeah.
Well, in a sense, we see him also doing the same thing to the Lord. He's saying, hey, here's what I need you to do for me. And if it works out that way, then I know it's from you. And so he says, behold, I'm standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. So let the young woman to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink. And who shall say, okay, drink, and I will water your camels. Let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. Wow. Now think about it. Camels don't just sip water. They take a lot of water. And he's been coming a long way, and he's got 10 of them. Hey, this poor girl, she's got to have some Arnold Schwarzenegger muscles, okay? And a character to boot to do that. So, I mean, it's going to be pretty clear that this is God working in that woman, if indeed a woman would do that, right? So he says, by this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master. Notice it's not about him. It's about his master. Because he understands that God and his master have this really tight relationship. And he's saying, hey, I'm here on behalf of my master. So do it because that's what my master sent me to do. And you're answering his need and his requirement by providing this woman is fundamentally what he's saying to God.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of faith that this servant has. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And notice this, isn't it amazing how God can work sometimes? And in this case, he didn't even finish praying. And look what happens. Before he had finished speaking to the Lord, basically, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor. Okay, so we know it's part of Abraham's line. It would have been his niece, right? Abraham's brother came out with her water jar on her shoulder. Okay, so here comes this young lady diddy-bopping with her, her water jar. Now, let me tell you something. This water jar isn't huge. I mean, she's got to be able to handle it, especially with the amount of water, too, to carry it all the way back to the town. But yet, look at what she's got. She's got this here. That means she's got to fill it up a lot of times for 10 camels, okay? And 16, it says, the young woman was very attractive in appearance. A maiden, or a woman of marriageable age is the way it kind of translates out in the Hebrew, whom no man had known. So she was a virgin. She went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. Okay, so apparently the spring is like down in like a little valley kind of thing. So she has to go down to the spring, fill it, and then carry it up, to be able to get to do with it what she's going to do or carry it back to the town. So, I mean, this is no small task. I mean, just one jar is quite a lot. So let's see what happens. In verse 17, then the servant ran to meet her and said, please give me a little water to drink from your jar. And look what she says. Now, this is amazing. She said, oh, drink. And notice she calls him my Lord. So something's obviously there because she's holding him at a high level. Maybe it's because he has all those camels and all those goods on it. I don't know. Yeah. Probably, right, Milton?
Yeah.
So, and she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, now look at this. I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking. Whoa. Notice she don't say, yeah, I'll get them 1 jar each, just enough to get them into town. I mean, she says, until they have finished drinking. I'm telling you what, that's a lot of water trips, okay? Hopefully the spring doesn't run dry. But notice what she said. She says exactly what it is that the servant had asked God to show him. I mean, would you say that's a sign?
Yes.
Amen. Amen. So in verse 20, so she quickly emptied her jar into the trough, and notice, she doesn't take her time, and ran again to the well to draw water, and she drew for all his camels. Now, this is one of those things that's almost like a thing of amazement. The man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. So he's not sold yet, even though she's doing what he had asked God for her to do. He's still not fully sold that this is the woman yet. He's still like, I still need to learn about this. I still need to figure out if this is what, I've come through Abraham to carry out. Is this it? Is this the one that, the Lord wants her to be the one for Isaac? Okay. So you can bet there's been quite a bit of time go on here, several hours. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring. Now here, he's ready. By taking the gold ring, he's already making a sign, okay, that he's pretty sure this is the one. The man took a gold ring weighing a half shekel and 2 bracelets for her arms weighing 10 gold shekels. Hey, now that's no small gift. And said, please tell me whose daughters you are. Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? And she said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. She added, we have plenty of both straw and fodder and room to spend the night. Okay, so now, hey, when things are working out this easy, it sounds to me like that would have been something that was helping sell him that he's going down the right track, that God is the one doing the work. The God of Abraham is the one making this work out. So I think that that's great. Now look what he does at verse 26. The man bowed his head and worshiped the Lord and said, now this is awesome. Blessed be the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his steadfast love and faithfulness toward my master. How good are we at praising the Lord like that when we see things that God is doing? I mean, that we can go and just humbly surrender to him and say, man, you are awesome, God, And listen to what he says. As for me, the Lord has led me in the way to the house of my master's kinsman, which is what Abraham had said. Remember, I want one from my kinsman, right? So that also fits what Abraham's tasked to him. And so verse 28, notice that Rebecca doesn't just kind of take him by the hand and take him. She decides to do the jackrabbit thing with, I would imagine, with that, thing of water, because I imagine she's still got to take her bottle of water home too, jug of water. And so the young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. So obviously he's coming along with the 10 camels behind her at some point. And so now we get into the picture of Abraham's family, some of his brothers' descendants. And we see a person that's going to be in quite a few of the chapters. And it's going to play out not just in Isaac's time, but it's going to play out in Jacob, Isaac's son's time. Okay. Here's this guy named Laban, an uncle. Okay. So here's what happens. Rebecca had a brother.
That's Rebecca's brother.
Yeah, exactly. And he's her brother, but then he'll be Jacob's uncle, when
Yeah.
Jacob is born. But
Oh,
notice this, Rebecca had a brother whose name was Laban. And yeah, we know about him, but we'll get more into his story later with Jacob. Laban ran out toward the man to the spring. Notice the servant still back toward the spring, okay? I mean, Rebecca beat feet and went home, left him there hanging, so to speak. But Laban, we know his character because we know about the story of him and Jacob. We know he's always been a very materialistic guy. And I think that this already is in his character. So let's see how it plays out. So he runs back to the servant back toward the spring, and he says in verse 30, as soon as he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms and heard the words of Rebekah, his sister, thus the man spoke to me, he went to the man. Okay, what is it that made him go to the man? His sister's words, or you think the bling bling all over Rebecca?
Yes.
Bling, bling.
I'm telling you. And behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. And so he said, oops, come in. Now, I like Laban. Come in, oh blessed of the Lord. Oh yeah, I'm sure Laban's really caring about his spiritual well-being. Okay, come in, oh blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside? Hey, look what I've done for you, dude. I prepared the house and a place for the camels. Look what I've done, Okay, come on. Hey, put some of them bracelets on me and rings and all that. But anyway, so the man came to the house, unharnessed the camels, and gave straw and fodder to the camels. And there was water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Now, think about this. The servant wasn't alone. I mean, he's got 10 camels. They've got to look out for all this stuff. So obviously, Abraham sent a group of men to go with him to make this long journey and to also protect their stuff. And of course, God was with them. So, I mean, hey, they were taken care of. But, plus these men are the ones that had to take care of the camels and all that stuff too. So I mean, obviously, they all needed to be taken care of too. So it says, then food was set before him to eat. But he said, now this is the servant that Abraham sent that is saying this now. I will not eat until I've said what I have to say, he said. And then what did they tell him? Okay, well, hey, let us hear it. In other words, speak on, let us hear it. Let me see what map they're giving us here, if it's anything that's of help. Oh, yeah, okay. All it does, I think this is the one I showed the other day, because here we have Tabor, Murrah, Ramoth, Gilead, Damascus, Mount Hor, and then Haran's all the way up here. Let me put it in the middle of the screen, and let me kind of zoom out a little. And you can see, here's Asia Minor, what is Turkey today. Here's what is believed to be the Mount Ararat for Noah, but I don't think it's there. I think it's down more around Persia, down Iran way, but that's neither here nor there. But here's Haran, and look, this is right here, there's Sodom, and right over here is about where Jerusalem is. Okay, and we know that he came up from way down here in this area just south of Mount Seir. So this was the trek that he took all the way up to Haran to make it up there. Okay, so let me get rid of this map. So notice the guy, he's focused on his task, and that's why he's saying, hey, I don't want to eat anything until I tell you my business. And then let's see where it goes from there. That's basically what he's saying. Hey, let's get this out of the way. This is more important than me getting distracted, or even because, hey, back then they drank. It was part of showing hospitality. They drank. and they might get a bit tipsy in the process. Okay. So he's saying, before all of that, let's make sure I get my words out straight, not stuttering. Let's get the business taken care of here. Okay. So he said in verse 34, I am Abraham's servant. Now they would know who Abraham was, but he's going to continue to explain. The Lord has greatly blessed my master. And I don't know how much the family was getting feedback from Abraham's successes or issues down in Canaan and Egypt, or if he was getting much at all. But anyway, the servant's filling him in on it. He says, the Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become great. Now, they obviously understood about the Lord, but remember, it was God, according to Stephen. Remember when Stephen told the story to the Pharisees just before he got stoned, that he said that God had called him out from Ur of the Chaldees? So in other words, all the way down there, God was already calling them. But remember that they had brought their gods with them too. So they obviously had been influenced by these other gods that they had taken. And they were also worshipers of other gods as well. We'll see that later with Jacob when Rachel steals the gods, from the house. But they still understand about the Lord. And I think that's pretty interesting because this is before the law, this is before Moses, this is before any of that. But they do know that it was God who called them out of Ur the Chaldees and brought them up to Haran, where they've been, and that Abraham was called by the Lord. So in that sense, this isn't something that is strange to them. Well, which Lord are you talking about? They know who the Lord is. And he says, the Lord has greatly blessed my master. He has become great. He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold. And I can see, I think I can see Laban's eyes just getting bigger and bigger, everything that's being said here, okay? He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male servants and female servants, camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old. And to him he has given all that he has. Hey, Laban's like bling, bling, baby. I think I hit the jackpot here if I play my cards right. So in verse 37, my master made me swear, saying, and hey, believe me, there in that time, if you swore, it was something that had to be carried out. It wasn't like, okay, just kind of willy-nilly. No, even God made it clear that if you made a vow to him, you better carry it out. Okay. Well, in essence, that's what's happening here. It's like, this is a vow, an unbreakable vow that has to be carried out. Okay. So it's that serious. So, it's not just something he's spouting off that, well, hey, he just wanted me to check and see what would happen. No, he made me swear, saying, you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I dwell, but you shall go to my father's house, to my clan, and take a wife for my son. So in other words, there's no negotiating this issue, this vow. It has to be this way. And now he's shown up at his father's clan, and he's to take a wife from them. So it's clear at this point, and by him putting the bracelets and the ring on her, he's already stipulated that that's the one that needs to be Isaac's wife. Okay, so that's already the sign, the signal's already there for the family. They already know what he's talking about. It's not like they have to say, well, we've got 15 women here in the family, which, let's start going through and see which one fits the bill. No, he's already made that decision. He feels God's already shown him who that person is because he's answered his prayer eminently. And so he says, and a wife for my son. In verse 39, I said to my master, perhaps the woman will not follow me. And then here's what Abraham told him. But he said to me, the Lord before whom I have walked, look here, will send his angel with you and prosper your way. So, I mean, by faith, I think the servants already seen this kind of as a done deal.
Yeah.
And wasn't that what got Abraham the credit from the Lord, where it said several times in the Old Testament and in the New Testament that his faith was counted to him as righteousness? In a sense, we see that even with the servant, that by faith he's doing this, that the God of Abraham's going to do what he's promised he'd do because the angel is going with him, right? The angel of the Lord. And he says, you shall take, and he continues, you shall take a wife for my son from my clan and from my father's house. So the stipulation is clear. Now, hey, I don't think there's any way that the family there can take it any other way than the way the servant is addressing it. It's quite clear what Abraham has sent his servant for, what the vow is, and that the vow comes from the Lord for all intents and purposes, because it's the Lord that is sending his angel with him to prosper his vow, what he was sent to do. So that's why he's there, and he's taking, let me just finish that again. You shall take a wife for my son from my clan and from my father's house. So I don't think there's any question there. So he wraps up what he's telling them. He's saying that Abraham continues to say in verse 41, then you will be free from my oath when you come to my clan. And if they will not give her to you, you will be free from my oath. Now, I think that I don't know why he added that, but I guess he's just being forthright in everything that Abraham had mentioned to him. He's just telling them everything. And so, hey, when the angel of the Lord is with you, you don't have to fear anything, right? And so he says in verse 42, so I came today to the spring and said, and he tells him his prayer, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if now you are prospering the way that I go, behold, I am standing by the spring of water. Let the virgin who comes out to draw water, to whom I shall say, please give me a little water from your jar to drink, and who will say to me, drink, I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for my master's son. And look, I mean, he relates it exactly. Before I had finished speaking to the Lord, basically in my heart, behold, Rebekah came out with her water jar on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew water. I said to her, please let me drink. Verse 46, she quickly let down the jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I will give your camels drink also. So I drank, and she gave the camels drink also. Then I asked her, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. So I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her arms. Then I bowed my head and worshiped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me by the right way, notice, by the right way, to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. So, I mean, he's making it clear. And so now he makes the stipulation, hey, Abraham sent me, God has come with me. It was God's plan that I would come and that he would make my way prosperous. He has revealed himself by identifying Rebekah as the person, because she carried out exactly the function that I had put before the Lord. And so he says, okay, all of this has happened exactly as it was supposed to. So he says, now then, if you are going to show steadfast love and faithfulness to my master, tell me. And if not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. In other words, hey, do it. Tell me what you're going to do now that I've laid everything out on the line to you. Because if you say yes, then I know what I got to do. But if you say no, then I've got to decide what I'm going to do. Okay. In other words, I think, hey, I've got to make another prayer to the Lord and say, what's up, Lord? But in this case, I mean, he's just making it clear to them. Hey, put it forthright. We're not going to eat yet until You tell me one way or the other, right? Now look who speaks. Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, the thing has come from the Lord. Now, I think that's awesome. They've heard the whole recounting by the servant. And they've noticed that God played an integral part throughout the whole thing from the time of Abraham's, taking his servant, explaining to him, and then sending him with the task. And that God was with the servant. And they understand the Lord's importance in this matter. And they said, well, since the thing has come from the Lord, we cannot speak to you good or bad. In other words, we have no choice but to obey. If it's from the Lord, we have to obey. Behold, Rebekah's before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. Now notice, it's not about the servant here. It's about the Lord. And so far, there's been no consultation with Rebekah about the situation, right? But that's how it was in that culture. They were arranged marriages, and for all intents and purposes, this is an arranging that's being carried out. Remember, Rebekah's never met Isaac. As a matter of fact, she probably just had some distant idea that she had some uncle, somewhere way down in some other land, but how much she knew about the family or whatnot, who knows? But we know that the family is the one who made the decision. Look at Laban's a crucial individual along with Bethuel, that they said, okay, we can't speak against what God has said to do. The Lord has said to do, right? So I think that shows that God was, along and working everything out, as long as you're going according to God's plan, the Romans 8:28 thing functions, right? And in essence, that's what we see here. He's working it out for good, according to his plan and purpose. So any questions so far up to this point? Okay, 52. When Abraham's servant heard their words, notice what he does. He bowed himself to the earth before the Lord. Hey, right in front of everybody, it's like, man, God, you were awesome, right? And the servant brought, so he gives his grateful thanksgiving to the Lord and thanks him that he's made his journey prosperous. And so now, notice what he does. He says, and the servant brought out jewelry of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave to her brother, Laban's already getting cha-ching, baby. He's like, man, this is good. I like this. To her brother and to her mother, costly ornaments, not the cheap stuff, but the good stuff, okay? And he and the men who were with him ate and drank. Now, see, here they eat and drink. Now it's a festive time. Now, technically, Rebekah's betrothed to Isaac. Just with that arrangement, just with what they've said, that they can't go against the Lord, Rebekah's betrothed. See, the betrothal wasn't like we do it today, like an engagement. Even though it's deeper than an engagement, the betrothal happens when the family decides. And that's what's happened. The decision's been made in the family. Rebekah's just a pawn in a sense. Okay? And so once that's been done, the men who were with him ate and drank, and they spent the night there. Okay, now they've had their festivities. Now they've been able to, take some drink and have good food and just enjoy themselves. And it says, when they arose in the morning, he said, now notice the servant don't mess around, right? He's like, okay, well, this part's worked out. I got to get home to Abraham because, hey, he's the one that sent me. And this is important. I got to get back to him. And so when the morning came, he said, send me away to my master. Now, usually there's a ceremony and stuff that happens in the family that, in a betrothal, it's almost like, it's not quite a wedding party, but it's a party. Okay. And usually the parties of that type lasted days, sometimes weeks. Look at, when Jesus turned the water into wine. How long was that party going on? Over a week, right? And they ran out of the booze and they needed Jesus to make some more. So, I mean, when you look at that, I mean, that was a festive time. So, in a sense, part of these festivities take some time. So, look what they say to him. It says, let the young lady, oh, verse 55. Her brother and her mother said, well, wait a minute. Let the young woman remain with us a while, at least 10 days. After that, she may go. So, hey, they want to party, and plus they want to say, hey, you know, they want to wish her well and all the stuff that comes with the family doings of the culture in that time. I mean, what they were asking for here was not unusual. It's not like it was something like out of the ordinary. But in this case, the servant is determined to carry out Abraham's plan as quickly as possible. And so he's ready to forego all that pomp and circumstance so that he can get back with what the master had sent him to do and for his young master, Isaac. See, because he's also under Isaac in that respect. So verse 56, but he said to them, do not delay me, since the Lord has prospered my way. In other words, hey, you guys have said it. God has sent me. The Lord has sent me. So since it's the Lord that sent me, let's keep this thing at a Lord level priority. Send me on my way, because this is something that's been approved by the Lord. Let's not hold the Lord up in his approval on what he sent me to do for Abraham. That's what he's saying here. So he's saying, since the Lord has prospered my way, send me away that I may go to my master. Well, in a sense, I'm glad that they did what they did. He says, they said, let us call the young woman and ask her. Verse 58. And they called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? I like Rebekah. I think she is an amazing woman, especially from the time that she met this servant and did all she did. Yeah, clearly God was in and motivating her, but God already knew her. He already knew her character and whatnot, even before the servant got there. And so within God's realm, it wasn't hard for her to do the things that the servant asked for the Lord to prompt on her heart to do. And I like what she says. And she said, I will go. And when I read, I will go, it reminded me of Isaiah chapter 6, when Isaiah was being commissioned by the Lord. And he said, here am I, send me. You know, when God said, who shall I send? Here am I, send me. And in a sense, I like Rebekah's words, because it's one of those words and statements of surrender and humility. You know, it's like, who am I to speak against the Lord? I will go. I mean, just a simple statement, but it carries so much depth of meaning, obedience, surrender, humility. It's like, wow, she is an amazing woman. So in verse 59, so they sent away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse. Now notice, I mean, they were a well-to-do family because she had her own servant, okay, and her nurse. And it's kind of like Sarai. Remember, she had her servant, nurse, whatever you want to call them, and Abraham's servant and his men. So they sent them away. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, our sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s, and may your offspring possess the gate of those who hate him. Wow, isn't that what God promised in his covenant to Abraham? That he was not only going to give him offspring, but that he was going to protect him in all he did. And in a sense, we're seeing them re-echo in their blessing part of the God's covenant with Abraham. I thought that was amazing, you know. So when we look at that, he's basically in that last bit where he's saying your offspring possess the gate of those who hate him. They're talking about that they will possess the land, okay, of the people that are against them. That's what's basically being said there in that statement. And we know that God carries that out, but it's not till later in Joshua's time that they start conquering the land to bring it in subjugation to the Jewish people. So then, verse 61, Then Rebekah and her young women arose and rode on the camels and followed the man. Thus, the servant took Rebekah and went on his way. Hey, so would you say that the servant's task was successful?
Yeah.
Yes.
Amen. And now he's got to make it home, right? Because hey, it's not a short thing. It's a couple weeks, maybe a few weeks of journey to get from Haran back down to where Abraham is at, down, just I think just south of Jerusalem is where he's at. Thus the servant took Rebekah and went on his way. Verse 62. Now Isaac had returned. Now this gap of time for their transit is where we pick up in verse 62. Now Isaac had returned from Beer Laharoi and was dwelling in the Negev. The Negev is the way that they spoke of the south part of Israel. I mean, I call it Israel. It wasn't Israel yet, but the south part of Canaan. And the Negev was that southern wilderness part. Let me see what they give us in the map here. Let's see what they're showing. I think they give me the same map, but I want to see if they give us the name here. There's Beersheba. Oh, there's Beer Laharoi. See here? See how it's way down here? Beer Laharoi is way in the south part. Can you see that in the map?
Yeah.
Okay. That's where he's going. Okay. He's coming down here. That's where Isaac's coming out of. That's what he's talking about when he says from Beer Laharoi. He says, now Isaac had returned from Beer Laharoi and was dwelling in the south. So that's where he was coming from, but they're still in the south. And Isaac went to meditate in the field toward evening. And he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, there were camels coming. Well, I imagine he brought back all 10. I don't think he left them camels, but he left them all the goods that the camels were carrying. Verse 64, and Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel and said to the servant, who is that man walking in the field to meet us? The servant said, it is my master. Notice, just as much as Abraham's his master, his son is his master too. So she took her veil and covered herself. That was a cultural thing. That was normal. She's basically betrothed. She puts the veil on. And in verse 66, the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Now, notice who he's reporting to. He's reporting to Isaac, not back to Abraham. He's telling Isaac of all he had done. It's not like he went back to Abraham, because for all intents and purposes, wasn't the mission he was sent on for Isaac's benefit?
Yes.
Yeah. So look what happens. I mean, it's right away. Then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother, and took Rebekah. That means the consummation of their betrothal was carried out, and that was their marriage. Okay, in that time, they didn't have to have a big marriage ceremony, or maybe they could have had one afterward, but the fact that she came willingly and the family had already given her up for Isaac was the union, okay? So that's his wife. So he took Rebekah and she became his wife. And he loved her. I mean, loved her in this sense doesn't mean he had sex with her. In this sense, it's like she was exactly what met his need, okay? And that's what it was. And look at what happened. Rebekah was so central because his mother dies right about that same time frame. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. So I mean, we see that now Isaac has somebody to lean on. Now his father's up there in age, okay? But yet, even so, when we pick up in chapter 25 next week, we'll see that in the very first verse, we see that Abraham takes a wife, and her name is Keturah. Now, think about this. Abraham is up there in age, probably around 150 or so. But yet, he has 6 sons, so that means she has to be of age to be able to have children. I mean, she ain't no, 150-year-old woman. Okay, she's probably 30. And so anyway, he takes a wife, and we'll see who she has through Abraham. And so, hey, guess what? Will those children will also be blessed under Abraham?
Yes.
Amen. It's still part of God's plan. God allowed it. So those children will also, and we'll talk more about who those children are and who they became. But so we see that Abraham stays busy all the way till the end, okay? And he has, I mean, God prospers that man a lot. But then we'll start getting into the story of Isaac and Rebekah. So any questions on this study of where we're starting to begin to see the transition from Abraham to Isaac? We'll see next week the blessing that Abraham gives to Isaac as he basically carries the covenantal agreement of God, from Abraham, his father. And then later he passes it on to Jacob, his youngest son. So we'll watch how that covenant passes down because it is God's plan and purpose for how he's carrying out what he had promised Abraham. So that's what we have for this evening. Any questions, comments, agreements, disagreements, or something maybe that God had laid on your heart and when you read it and you saw something in here that would definitely benefit us. It's amazing how God works, isn't it, though?
I got something in my other Bible I'd like to get and read for you.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing thing when you learn to just lean on and trust the Lord. Because, I mean, man, he has such wonders to carry out when we just surrender to him and not try to do things our own way, but his way. And when we do things his way, things work out right well. But when we try to force things like we saw with Abram and Sarai, where they used Hagar, to be the one that provided this child of promise, this offspring that God was going to provide, things kind of got a bit messy. And there just wasn't any peace between Sarai and Hagar, and it just caused some dysfunction in the family, even though Abram loved Ishmael, so I mean, we see that those things go on. Yeah, go ahead, Milton.
It's something I found years ago that really helped me. It says, it is a mystery beyond human understanding that God can allow complete freedom to the human will and yet still be able to accomplish his purpose. He will not manipulate or force the hand of any person, yet his plan will progress to its appointed end right on schedule without any doubt as to the outcome.
Amen.
I just saw that in that story.
You know what? Yeah. You know what that brings up in my mind? Let me take you over here to Psalm 139 and look at what he says right over here toward the end.
The die is cast.
He says, what's that?
Is that the one, the die is cast into the lap?
Not that one. I'm talking about this one. He says,
right.
Hang on.
Are you awake?
Yeah.
Okay, here. He says, like he's talking about when he created us in the womb, right? For you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. So in other words, God already has put us together and he's given us some insight already. He says, my frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. But look what he says. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. Look what he says. In your book were written every one of them. And depending on the version that you look at, I like the New American Standard. Look what he says here. He says, the days that you were ordained for me were already carried. I mean, basically, you've written all the days that were ordained for me when as yet there was one of them. And I mean, it kind of is like what you're talking about there. God already knows, even though we have free will. That's the paradox, is that
Yes.
we can make the decision, but God already knows how the days are ordained for us to carry out his plan and purpose in the midst of a sinful and rebellious world, not in a controlling way, but because he knows how every day is ordained for us to carry out the function. I don't know how best. It's like, it almost sounds like, hey, well, wait a minute, that sounds like he's already manipulated us. No, because we do have free will. And clearly, Rebecca did what she did because of, I mean, it's not because, you would think that God is saying you will do it this way, but it's because her heart was right before the Lord to do what the Lord had laid on her heart. Let me just put it that way. I mean, I know it's a difficult concept to understand, but it was her decision to do it, though. And I'm
will.
yeah, it's God's will. I mean,
It's
it's
a
like,
paradox.
it is a paradox, but it's what brings God the honor and the glory in the process. Did
Absolutely.
God use Pharaoh's evil for his plan?
Yes.
Yeah, when you look at things like that, it's like God already knew what Pharaoh's going to do, but he didn't use it in a sense that he was going to make him do good things, but he let his heart be hardened and do bad things to show God's power. So I mean, those are things that you look at and you say, well, God already knew that Pharaoh's heart was such that he would never have been in under his free will a person that would just automatically turn over to the Lord and do what the loving thing that, you would think that people should do.
Yeah.
So God used him in his fallen state to carry out his plan and purpose. And God hardened his heart several times, right?
Yeah.
And that's just how God works. He knows our hearts already. And he lays on our hearts things to do. And that's why Paul says we're not to quench the spirit. Because, I mean, when the spirit prompts us, we need to be like Rebecca. Yes, Lord, I want to do that because that brings you honor and glory. Amen.
When she said she would go, you said you thought of Isaiah? Is that who you said you thought?
Yeah. Isaiah chapter 6.
I thought of Ruth.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Your God will be my God.
Yeah.
Your people will be my people. Where you go, I will go. Where you die, I will die. Yeah. Hey, yeah. I mean, isn't that, a beautiful? Okay, look what he says in Isaiah 6, verse 8. Then I heard the verse of the Lord say, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Well, I said, I could almost picture Isaiah very humbled before the majestic throne of God, where the train of his robe fills the temple with glory. I mean, I'd be scared spitless, okay? But look at, you're in that humble kind of state. And when God asked, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? Then I said, and I think his voice squeaked, here am I, send me.
I think he looked around and said, there's nobody else here. Here am I, send me.
Yeah, but it was a humble thing to say before the Lord, right? Like, okay, hey. Yeah. No,
well, there's nobody here but me.
I can't believe it. So yeah. I mean, I look at those things and I'm like, man, God, it's amazing how you work. You are awesome. So we look at God and we say, well, thank you, Lord, for your wonder, because you are awesome. So any questions, any other questions, comments, agreements, disagreements? Okay, we ready for prayer time?
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and let me update this layout so that I will come back here. And I went through verse 67, 10 through 67. Let's make that work. Okay. Let me minimize this and stop the share here. Maybe. Oh, there it is. Okay. Let me pull up the prayer list. Where are you? There you are. Okay. Here's what we got. Oh, wrong one. Ted, you messed up.
Stop the recording.
I know it's one of this one. Let's go with this one. Ah, there we go. Okay.
Did you stop the recording?
Oh, thank you for that. Let me stop the share and let's stop